The Noble Eightfold Path. With a subhead of "There's a reason phone numbers are 7 digits." And this kind of flows naturally from the Four Noble Truths. This is the fourth of the Noble Truths, is that there is a path towards reducing our suffering. The Noble Eightfold Path is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So I don't know about you, but to be perfectly honest, I read that and I kind of feel a little overwhelmed. It's like, wow, it's just an awful lot to get right. I think when I first came across the Noble Eightfold Path, was probably the first time when I walked into the temple in Trout Lake, and I saw this on the wall in one of the in the upper right-hand corner of the temple, and I said, okay, I got that, no problem. Now 5 years later, I read this list, and it's just, I find it kind of overwhelming. How do you get all that right? So what I'm going to talk a little bit about is, I'm not going to go through each one and elaborate on each one, because that would just overwhelm me too much. But what I'm going to talk about is an approach to the Eightfold Path more than the Eightfold Path itself. And the first thing that I want to start off with is something that the Shakyamuni Buddha said. The Buddha was once asked by a disciple, "Would it be true to say that a part of our training is for the development of love and compassion?" And the Buddha said, "No, it would not be true to say this. It would be true to say that the whole of our training is for the development of love and compassion." And that kind of resonated with me because, a lot of the 10 trillion billion pages of Buddhist writings are really just unpacking some very basic truths. And I think that can be very helpful to us when we see something that's overwhelming, to realize that it's really just kind of an elaboration on some very simple truths. And the development of love and compassion, or promoting love and compassion, is one way to view that. Another is a saying that I've heard from Tai Kozen many a time: when in doubt, love more. That will get you through an awful lot of life, as just a very simple, pithy guidepost. Another one, an approach to kind of taking a look at this Noble Eightfold Path, is, there is no right and wrong. Don't think of it as if you don't pick the right action, then you've picked the wrong action. There is no right, there is no wrong. A lot of our teachers, when talking about the Eightfold Path, have kind of clarified that right could also be taken as wise. So when you look at this Noble Eightfold Path, don't think of it in terms of being right or wrong. Another way to kind of embrace this Eightfold Path is to take a look at the three poisons: attachment, anger, and delusion. And the opposite of that, which is a bit of a mouthful, the three wholesome mental factors, which is equanimity or generosity, compassion, and wisdom. Are you promoting generosity, compassion, and wisdom in your action or your speech or your intention or whatever? Or are you promoting one of the three poisons: anger, attachment, and delusion. Again, it's just a way to be guided when you're navigating through the Noble Eightfold Path. Another way to, kind of another tool you can use when contemplating the Noble Eightfold Path is our metta practice. May you be well, happy, no love, and no peace. Is whatever you view or intend or speak, or your actions and so on, are they promoting this, or are they taking away from this? So it's not about being right or wrong, picking the right versus the wrong action or whatever. We actually have a few tools with which we can kind of evaluate what we do. Are we promoting suffering? Or are we promoting the cessation of suffering? It's another more pithy way of tackling this path. So there are, let's see here, five different ways I've kind of unfolded that you can use to evaluate your relationship with the Eightfold Path. Promoting love and compassion, when in doubt, love more. The three poisons are metta practice and promoting or lessening suffering. And I do mention five different ones because different people will resonate to different words. Down deep, it's all the same thing. But I know for myself, I resonate to someone will say something and it'll just click for me, whereas I've heard it, a dozen times before and it didn't click. So having a choice of a couple different options of how you view something can help make it easier for things to click. So I've underlined and bolded right intention, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, because these are 4 of the 8 Noble Path, where these 5 tools really are fairly easy to see. Right intention, promoting love and compassion, that's kind of easy to get. Right action, right speech, like right livelihood. It either increases or decreases suffering. But when we get to view, effort, mindfulness, and concentration, it doesn't fit quite so easily. So I'm going to talk individually about the remaining 4 a little bit, and then just kind of turn them around so maybe they will fit better. For example, right view. One of my favorite sayings about this is, form is what you have before preconceptions and judgment. And that just resonates with me. It may not for someone else, but things are just what they are. We run into trouble when we start dumping our preconceptions and judgments on top of them. And what does that do? That ends up by potentially causing us to suffer. So if you turn loving kindness towards oneself, practicing right view and being kind to yourself will help you find the way to come up with the right view without layering your preconceptions and judgments on top of things. There are some things that, just without thinking about them, you find repulsive or beautiful. Again, form is what you have before preconceptions and judgments, but things just are what they are, no more and no less. Thich Nhat Hanh talks often about a pile of garbage and a rose. And a pile of garbage will provide nutrients for the rose to grow, and the rose will die and become part of that compost pile. So there's kind of an ongoing give and take of becoming one thing versus another. So to say that something is just inherently repulsive or beautiful is just a very narrow way of looking at things. And again, if you kind of turn those 5 tools that I mentioned earlier inwards towards yourself, and you want to be kind to yourself, treating things with more equanimity will bring more peace into your life. Right view, it can also be seen in terms of attachment, being attached to things. And one of my favorite Buddhist sages is, of course, Maud from Harold and Maude. Here today, gone tomorrow. So it's best not to get attached to things. And I've collected a few things in my time, but it's all incidental, not integral. And if you know what I mean. So again, right view can really be directed inwards. And if we let go of our attachments and view things just, they are what they are, they don't have any self-importance, that can again lead us to have a more peaceful life. So I guess what I'm getting at is if you take those 5 tools and turn them towards yourself, they do then indeed work. In right view, you can use those 5 tools when dealing with right view if you look inwards towards being kind to yourself. Right effort. One of my favorite stories about right effort is when the Buddha talks about playing a stringed instrument. If you tune it too tight, the strings will break. If you tune it too loose, it will be way out of tune. You want to tune it just right. So that's the middle way, not too tight, not too loose. So that's one of the teachings. In contrast to some of the things that Dogen tells us, time flies like an arrow from a bow, and this fact should make us train with all our might using the same energy we would employ if our hair were to catch on fire. And one that we hear often in this Sangha, let us be respectfully reminded, life and death are of supreme importance. Time swiftly passes by, and with our only chance, each of us must aspire to awaken. Be aware, do not squander your life. So the tone of this is a little more emphatic than the story of the Buddha talking about the stringed instrument. But again, you still need to find a balance. And Dogen even here talks about aspiring. And sometimes aspiring can be framed in terms of attachment and desire. But it doesn't have to. So here's a real mind bender for you. Is it possible to aspire without attachment? It's a tough one, isn't it? Aspiring without attachment. That's the kind of thing that took me a few years to wrap my mind around. So I really just throw that out there as a thought to ponder rather than trying to attempt to give a clear answer to that. But aspiring without attachment, again, is just another example of being kind to yourself and not causing yourself to suffer. So if you take these 5 tools that I've talked about and apply them inwards to yourself in terms of being kind to yourself, you can use them to evaluate right effort. Mindfulness, here we go. Need I say more? Right? That's, need I say more? So I'm just going to leave that for a second. But I do have a couple other little things to say about that. Thich Nhat Hanh talks often about tangerine meditation. In fact, if I remember correctly, the Buddha, one of the very first things that he explained to the children who he had befriended after he became enlightened was to explain the path that he had just discovered in terms of eating a tangerine mindfully. And Thich Nhat Hanh is famous for having tangerine parties where everyone has a tangerine and just eats it with full mindfulness. With, of course, the hopes that that will spill over into the rest of your day and you can conduct your entire day in that same mindfulness, which is, of course, a tall order. The mind is a funny thing. So here's a little trick that I use is the next time you brush your teeth. Personally, this works for me. Personally, I will go through half of the time brushing my teeth, thinking like this guy here. You know, I'm thinking about, oh God, what did I do yesterday? And oh my gosh, my to-do list tomorrow. And my mind is just going a million miles an hour, absorbed in this, that, and the other. And then I'll be brushing my teeth and I'll think to myself, wow, wait a minute, I just totally lost myself. I was not here. And then I'll finish up brushing my teeth, being a little mindful about it and just letting go of the past and the future and just brush my teeth. And for me, it's helpful to have a kind of a daily activity that can be so routine and so easy to slip into getting sucked into getting absorbed by your thoughts, and pick a daily activity that kind of triggers your remembrance to just, let go of it and just be with what you're doing. For me, it's brushing your teeth. For you, it might be, cleaning up the kitchen or whatever it is. But in just your day-to-day activities, look for opportunities to use that as a trigger to remember to practice eating the tangerine mindfully. So if you look at mindfulness in terms of being kind to yourself, when in doubt, love yourself more. Again, if you turn these 5 little tools inwards to yourself, right mindfulness can be thought of as being kind to yourself. It's being unmindful is you just lose yourself just a little bit. Concentration. Okay, this is the one that I was hoping in the last 20 minutes that I would get some sort of inspiration. We'll find out in the next minute or so, but I can speak to it in terms of meditating and sitting like we do. You don't want to sit and just like try and force yourself to have an empty mind. If you sit there and just think about, oh God, I'm not going to think about anything. Well, then it's just, that's not the middle way. And clearly, if you're like me, very slothful like that, in the hammock there, you can be too relaxed. When we're sitting is a good opportunity to think about right concentration. You want to just watch your thoughts go by, observe them, but you don't want to get sucked into them and you don't want to fight them. Just let them float by. And as far as concentration, right concentration as something to take you through the whole rest of the day, honestly, I'm unclear on that. Everything that I come up with seems to fall more into the category of right effort or right mindfulness. So my understanding of right concentration for me is limited to when we're sitting in meditation, which I realize is limited because this is all about just living life, not just living the few minutes when you're sitting on your cushion. So I'll come back to that in a bit and punt to one of our teachers, hopefully. Here's something that I think might touch upon it, and I'm not sure. Again, looking for some feedback from our teachers on this. Once a very old king went to see an old hermit who lived in a bird's nest in the top of a tree. And he asked, "What is the most important Buddhist teaching?" The hermit answered, "Do no evil, do only good. Purify your heart." The king had expected to hear a very long explanation. He protested, "But even a 5-year-old child can understand that." The teacher said, "Yes, but even an 80-year-old man cannot do it." So this all sounds very simple, but it's difficult. It's difficult to put into practice. And that is why we call it practice. That is what we do. So that's all I've got on the Noble Eightfold Path. And I would welcome any of our teachers to elaborate on anything I've said, but in particular, right concentration as it pertains to the rest of the day when we're not on our cushion.
Tai-Z?
Psychosen.
Would you like to give your interpretation of right concentration?
Well, in my practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, right concentration is what Reverend Scott talked about, which is meditation. My meditation practice. It is the foundation that I think that supports all of the other paths that Scott mentioned. As I work on all of them, they become clearer and clearer in focus due to the time that I spend in meditation. Not that I spend specific thought in meditating there, but awareness becomes clearer, more bright, more vibrant, so that my practice of wise speech, for example, did meditation where all of a sudden I had these little awakenings that what I thought was an appropriate phrase or expression to somebody really, in fact, caused harm or was painful. And so again, for me, the concept of wise concentration is the basis for everything else. It supports us. It brings it back into clear. That's what I could offer.
Venerable Jeff? Do you have a thought about this?
Probably not, but I can say a few things. I tend to use the translation of right meditation or skillful meditation versus concentration. And in general, I think of meditation as an active practice or exercise, like a specific activity. You know, meditation, an activity like brushing our teeth or cleaning the kitchen. Whereas I think of concentration, or not concentration, excuse me, mindfulness, as a general awareness of what we're doing, whatever our activity happens to be. You know, so we could be mindful, and then hopefully are mindful while we're practicing meditation. We could also be mindful while we're cleaning the kitchen. But to me, meditation generally just speaks to a more specific activity.
The word in Pali for that is, the word is samadhi. Samadhi we take as meditation. And Reverend Scott said that it shouldn't be just something that just happens when we're on the pillow, when we're just sitting in formal meditation. Once Tai-Z and I were driving down the gorge, and I was just, there was no me, there was no Tai-Z, there was just being. And I keep being struck by how beautiful the mountains were and how beautiful the trees were and how beautiful everything was. And I kept saying, oh, the mountains are so beautiful. Oh, the trees are just incredible. I was having little mini awakening moments of just being very present. And after I'd said that about half a dozen times, Tai-Z looked at me and said, Kozen, got it. Trees, mountains, clouds, snow, beautiful, got it, and went on. And the deal is that what happens is we sit, all of a sudden, when Jean-Luc is out planting his trees or watering his trees, there comes a place of no Jean-Luc. There comes a place of no trees and no water. There's just Izzy. And that is, for me, the right concentration. It's where we take our meditation practice that we work so hard to build up again and again and again, and we find ourselves in the middle of life, in the middle of our practice, just Izzying up a storm. It's like when Gretchen of the curly hair goes to work. She has a lot to do. And there may come a time when she's just doing it without even thinking about what she's doing. She's just there Izzy. No judgments, no preconcepts, just Izzy. So the right concentration is something we practice on our pillow. We practice as we do our meditation. But right concentration is where we carry that over for everything we do. Sometimes when the spring here, we have a lot of dandelions that we planted because the flowers are the first ones that come for the bees. So we took all the little fuzzy heads and blew them off so that the seeds would go everywhere. We have lots of dandelions for the bees here. And sometimes out walking, I'll walk across the dandelion and say, hello, I probably blew on the fuzzy thing that got you here. Welcome, my little flower. And it was just no me, no flower, just being. And for me, that's the wonderful part of that right concentration, just being 100% present with no judgment. And Reverend Scott, you gave a wonderful, I liked your examples. I really liked the dog looking at, I'm just here, and the human thinking of all of these other things. I've not been able to verify that the quotes you gave as the Buddhas actually came from the Buddha himself. I was able to verify that certainly within his teaching and practice, to the question of the monk who said, is the whole of our practice, or part of our practice, the loving kindness, and the Buddha responded, the whole of our practice is. I've not been able to find that anywhere documented that that's actually his quote. It's certainly his teaching, but I don't know if that's really his whole quote. But if you ever find a reference where he actually said that and we can look it up in the sutra, I would be real happy to know that, because I went to the websites that proposed to have all of his quotes down and I couldn't find it. And I read most of the sutras, I just couldn't find it. I think you did a good job. I certainly learned something today. Thank you. I see, show of hands, yay. Have a question. How many found this valuable? Show of hands. Okay. The beautiful part about the teaching is that when Reverend Valerie teaches, it's this is this, this is this, this is this, this is this, don't mess with it. When Jean-Luc teaches, it's this is suggested. People might think of it this way. This is what I've heard. When Min Bao teaches, it's, oh my golly, you're not going to believe what happened next. And then there was, and when Reverend Scott teaches, it's like, oh, well, this is what I've heard. And I put these pieces together and it's over here. And everyone presents it with their own heart and their own flavor. So if you think of it like soup, Reverend Valerie is like navy bean soup, and Jean-Luc is like beef stew, and Reverend Scott is like pho, and Venerable Jeff is sort of like broccoli and cheese. And it's all these wonderful flavors, and God knows what Thai Z is. All these wonderful flavors, and each one is different, yet each one is soup. And so with the teachings come a great deal of texture and a great deal of thought. And I want to tell you, I've been nothing but impressed with everyone who teaches here. And I want to thank you all for attending, but also thank you all the students that are putting this together and sharing their heart. For me, the most absolute, this is it, is Reverend Valerie, and that is her nature. And sometimes I think, boy, are you off? Sometimes I think, boy, she's got it down pat. But each time I learn. And Reverend Scott, when he first came here, he said, Kozen, this whole thing about Buddhism and suffering is wrong. I don't suffer a bit. Then I've watched him over the years develop this real great texture and flavor of suffering. When Tai Z first took his first 5 vows, the 10 cardinal precepts. He said, yeah, I'll go through the ceremony. Yeah, this all sounds good. Okay. And then about 4 years later, he brought me back. He says, did you know there was a whole bunch more? Have I not been doing them all? And it was great fun to see how this all works. So I want you to hear that this is a wealth of teaching. And each teacher, as they study and they learn and they present, their quality of their Zen, their Tien, their practice, their heart enlarges. It becomes greater and fuller. And the richness of our sharing, we get to hear the common stories. So this is, I like attending all of them because each one I learn a little bit. Each one I see into their heart, but I also get to hear their take on life. And I'll tell you that I'm absolutely the last person in the world that says my take on life is the correct one. It's all just this wonderful river flowing, and I so appreciate all the textures. Tai Z, any final comments? No. Venerable Jeff, any final comments?
Yes, broccoli cheese soup is delicious.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, great job, Scott.
Yes. Reverend Valerie, any final comments?
I want to recognize Scott for his genuine humility. I appreciate the way that you just honestly said, hey, I can't exactly interpret every single one of these. And, you know, I think that humility is one of the higher marks of accomplishment on our path. So I just want to commend you for that.
Reverend Jean-Luc?
Stay tuned next week for the precepts.
Min Bao?
Reverend Scott, that was wonderful. My favorite part was how you set it up with the lens of looking, because you're right, all 8 of those are overwhelming and what do they mean? But when you look at it through the lens of, does it increase suffering or does it decrease suffering? Is it an act of love or not? I mean, just looking at through the lens of metta just really made it, I really understood it better. So thank you so much for that. That was so helpful.
Reverend Scott, any final word?
Oh, thank you. That was fun. Yeah, and maybe that's one of the advantages of being a very simple-minded person, is that I always look towards the simple way of looking at things. And if I can share that with other people, so much the better.
Okay, anyone else want to make a final comment? No. So, let's have Jean-Luc, would you be willing to offer merit for this, please? And Scott, could you post that again for us so that everybody can see it?
There it is.
I don't have a bell.
Ding!
May the merit of this penetrate into each thing in all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, Mahaprajna Paramita. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sambuddhassa.
Most wonderful, my friends. Thank you all for attending. We'll see you next week. Remember, it starts at 8:30 and Reverend Scott will put this out. Boy, what a lovely Sangha. It just warms the cockles of my old heart, and it's still 19 degrees outside, so it's lovely to stay warm. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.